whenever she's ready.
Hello.
Hello.
My first question is, what age group should an 11-year-old girl write for?
I think you write about what you know and what you know about. So what sort of interest do you have, Imogen?
I like reading and writing and baking and animals.
Animals. What sort of animals have you got or are familiar with?
I know quite a lot about dogs.
Right, okay. So if you wrote about dogs, you would have authenticity in your writing, and people would know it, and you would have enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is really important. What kind of books do you read?
I like classics.
Yeah?
Like Anne of Green Gables and Little Women.
Yeah? Okay. So would you like to write books that are similar to that? Are you a science fiction person? Then don't attempt it. Okay? Yeah. So if the kind of books that you read and you enjoy and the things you know about are good starters for writing. Because other people, I don't know anything about dogs. If I read your book about dogs, I'd say, gosh, this sounds real. So that's a very good point.
My next question is, what can I do now to improve my writing?
What can you do now? Read. Read critically. Sometimes perhaps if you look at a book and you don't think it's that good, think of what is wrong with it and what you would do better with it. Do you ever go up to the Storylines Festival in Auckland? That's something that's held in about, I think, September or maybe August of this year. I'm not quite sure what the date is. There's a lot of writers, often people like Joy Cowley, Margaret Mahy, John Parker, different ones, and they will be talking. And if you can get somebody to take you up there for the day, you will listen to quite a few different authors speaking and get some good ideas.
When did you start writing?
It's a hard question. I did do a little bit of writing when I was younger, but I made a mistake in that I was good at writing, but I didn't realise it was probably the thing that I should have pursued. And so I did other things. When I was at school, I tried to get into the netball team. I didn't sort of think, right, I'm a good writer, I should be a journalist or something like that. Plus the fact that I went to a country school where I didn't know about many careers. You will be a lot better off. You can get good career guidance. So I did a little bit of writing, but really I was a late starter. It wasn't until I was in my 40s that I started to write. So maybe in some ways then I was ready to write because I happened to have some young children at that time. I was sort of an older parent and I had someone to write for. So I don't know whether with you, hopefully you'll start sooner and maybe you'll write for teenage girls who have similar interests to you, because you will know what they like. But I was a bit of a late starter and I probably could have written more books if I had started a bit sooner.
Your stories, they've got lots of them about war and things which little kids and stuff don't really get. How do you make them suitable because they're not scary?
Yeah. I don't know. For one thing, I don't know how I have come to write war stories because I don't like war. I don't like war films. I could never watch Schindler's List. I couldn't watch it. But for some reason, I have somehow ended up writing war stories. But I've always written about the sort of the human side of war. And here it's really a book about friendship, about a couple of outsiders, about a couple who, the bantam is not very strong, the soldier's not very strong, but between them in friendship they get a strength and a courage. So that's the present from the past. It's about a souvenir of war, but instead of being a bayonet or a bullet, it's something that was given as a gift, a positive gift that was given to the soldiers to cheer them up, this little brass box that was given to them. So it's a positive memento for war. Stefania's Dancing Slippers, once again, is a war story, but it's about courage and how some fragile little thing, like a pair of dancing slippers which were beautiful, could sustain and give courage to somebody right through very difficult times. So there's a common thread, but it's always something positive that has come out of a terrible situation.
What's your favourite story, like read by someone else, and why?
When I was a child, and I grew up, and we grew up in the country, and our local library did not have a children's section, and my parents really couldn't afford children's books, so I really, as a child, didn't read very many children's books. There was a few, about schoolgirls in England and the Williams stories and things, but we tended to read adult books, animal stories and things like that. So I really have not the classic children's books I kind of missed out on. But as far as New Zealand books go, I do love the books of Joy Cowley. I do, and I like Margaret Marty's use of words, but I love the sense of fun that Joy Cowley has. And I do tend to read, because I write picture books, I tend to read picture books. Even though I'm an adult, I collect them. I go to the library and people are throwing out books and I collect them. And I've got heaps of them at home. And now I've got some grandchildren. Unfortunately, I've got someone to share them with, and that's really nice.
How long does it take to write a book?
I think it takes a lifetime, Imogen, because I think if you collect ideas, I don't know whether you've ever started an ideas book, but that's quite a good idea, to jot down little thoughts. I could write a story about that. You may not be enough for a story, but what I find is that I get an idea from here, and that might have happened when I was at your age, and then something happens when I'm older, then somebody says something, and I think, wow, I could write a story. And all those three things come together. I throw in some imagination, and I kind of stir it all around, and that is where a story comes from. And the actual development of it can have taken years. That Nobody's Dog is an example of something I heard when I was at school, a dog that we had when we were children, something I read as an adult, some idea I had, and the whole lot went together, but it was a lifetime.
What publisher first published you?
The publisher first published me was one called Century Hutchinson, which is no longer in business, and this is what's happening in New Zealand, is that a lot of the small publishers are being amalgamated into big ones like Penguin and so on, and so it is becoming a little bit more difficult because the big publishers don't really want New Zealand books. They simply New Zealand stories. They want a story that could be read by children all over the world because that is the bigger market. So, and I particularly like to write New Zealand children's stories because when I was young, they were always about England. They were always about people who had nannies and about parents who went off to India and they went to school with ivy all over them, and that was not my district high school at all. And houses had attics and secret rooms, and they had nannies and maids. And so I do like writing New Zealand children's books, but it can be a bit difficult to get them published.
Thank you very much for answering.
Imogen, it's an absolute pleasure, and I wish you all the best with your own writing. I really do. And I'm sure you've got a great future ahead of you. So what is your surname?
Jones.
Right, I shall look out for it.